Okay, year six, welcome back to our online learning and our reading for this week. We are having a look at a narrative called The Inept Magician. Okay, now you can take quite a lot from that title. We're hopefully going to be involved in a story that involves magic or someone who practices magic as a magician. You can see from the illustration that there is a bunny in a hat, which again gives you the idea of magic and a magician. But this word inept means that it is likely that our magician is not very good. Okay, so the word inept means that they can't do it very well and they're not very good at it. Okay, so the title, The Inept Magician, makes me think that he hasn't got the skill of a very impressive magician, and things are likely to have gone wrong or be going wrong within this story. But let's have a look. Sproggit was a musician. I almost said musician there. Sproggit was a magician, or at least he was trying his hardest to be a magician. Okay, so we've got our character Sproggit. I'm assuming he is the inept magician because it says he was trying his hardest, which suggests that he's not very good at what he's doing. So he's really trying, but he's not very good at it. He had all of the equipment, a cloak, a white rabbit, and even his dad's old battered top hat. Okay, so he looks like a magician. He's got a cloak, he's got the white rabbit in his hat, and he's got his top hat, although it's old and battered, which makes you think sort of it's quite scruffy, probably has a few holes in it. So it's not the sort of most elaborate and fancy hat, but he's got all the equipment to make a magician. True, the rabbit kept escaping from its hutch, and the cloak was an old sheet of dyed black, but he really was trying. Okay, so he's got all the equipment, but even his equipment isn't very good. So his hat's all battered, his rabbit keeps escaping, and his cloak is actually just an old sheet that they've dyed black. It's not actually a cloak, but he was trying. This sort of gives me the image of sort of a young child dressing up and pretending that he is a magician. I think we've got the idea that he's slightly older, but I've got this image in my head of a child who wants to play magician, but all his parents could give him was a battered hat and an old sheet. But we shall see. His friend Derm had been attending the Curious League of Conjurers, or Clock for short, for nearly a year now, and Sproggit was desperate to join him. Okay, so we've got an introduction of a character, a friend Derm, and he is attending the Clock, which is the League of Conjurers. Now, conjurers means magicians. Okay, so it's a group or a school or somewhere where they train, I'm assuming. And his friend has been going for nearly a year, but Sproggit hasn't. Okay, and it's clearly Sproggit's goal to want to go and join him and train to be a magician. Derm was amazing. His parents were wealthy cabbage farmers and could afford the best equipment. Okay, so now you've got the idea that Sproggit comes from quite a poor family. Okay, so he's not very well off because he's wearing a sheet, he's got a battered old hat, and he has made reference to the fact that Derm's parents is wealthy and can afford the best equipment. Okay, so you've got that contrast of Sproggit is probably not very well off, whereas Derm is. So his parents, because they are wealthy, can afford to give him the best equipment and to send him to this training program for magicians. He had a cloak made of actual stardust, or so he said. Okay, so he's clearly stated that his cloak is made of stardust, although the fact that he says, or so he said, makes me think that Sproggit doesn't quite believe that. And we as readers aren't supposed to quite believe that, but that's what he says it's made of. Sproggit suspected it was probably just silk with some glitter sprinkled over it. He hadn't said anything. Okay, so Sproggit doesn't believe that it's made of actual stardust. He thinks it's silk with added glitter, but he hasn't said anything. Now, the fact that he hasn't said anything either means that they are very good friends and he doesn't want to upset him by sort of saying that he doesn't believe what Derm is saying, or it might be that he doesn't want to make him mad so that Derm stops showing him things. Because you get the idea that Sproggit and Derm are practicing being magicians together after Derm has learnt things at Clock where he is studying. So it might be that Sproggit is going along with what Derm said, just so that Derm will help him. Derm had tried to teach Sproggit the magic he'd been learning. There you go. So Derm has been trying to teach Sproggit, the magic he'd been learning. Now the fact it says tried, again, suggests that Sproggit isn't very good at this. Okay, so try to teach rather than Derm had been teaching, which would suggest that Sproggit was learning something. The fact that Derm says he tried to teach him suggests that Sproggit wasn't picking it up very well. He made it seem so easy. Just utter a few words and wiggle your wand. Let's just say wand. Okay, so Derm can clearly do magic very well. Sproggit clearly can't. Sproggit had even practiced his Scottish accent so that he could sound exactly like Derm in case that was the problem. Okay, so Derm, we've got this idea that Derm is Scottish. That's just been introduced. And Sproggit has tried to talk the way that Derm does because he thinks that it's his accent that is meaning that he can't cast the spells. Venetius lepus, he'd shouted, waving his wand at his poor rabbit. Okay, now, obviously we don't know what Venetius lepus means from this. Now, I'm assuming it gives us more information later. Instead of disappearing, it just looked at him with a hurt expression before going to the toilet in the hat. Okay, so the spell was clearly meant to make the rabbit disappear. Now, Vanicius obviously sounds like vanish. Lepus is means rabbit, I think in Latin. Don't quote me on that, but it means rabbit in a language. And so clearly the spell was supposed to make the rabbit disappear, but it didn't work because it just sort of sat there. And the rabbit is clearly quite upset by the fact that Sproggit has tried to make it disappear. I think the hurt expression shows that the rabbit is a bit upset about Sproggit wanting to send it away. And then it's gone to the toilet in his hat because it hasn't disappeared, it's just sort of sat there. Sproggit sat back on the wooden bench at the top of his garden and sighed. Okay, so he's upset that his spell didn't work. It's no use, he said to Derm, who was busy sawing a goat in half on the other side of the patio. Okay, so Derm was also there practicing his magic by sawing a goat in half. And Sproggit has just tried his spell, which didn't work. The goat didn't seem particularly bothered by what was going on. I'll never be any good. Okay, so Sproggit's feeling a bit sorry for himself here. None of his magics work, and his friend Derm is clearly very good at it as he's moved on to sawing a goat in half, who doesn't seem particularly bothered, which is surprising because I think a goat would be quite bothered by that, but never mind. Derm looked up from his work and gave a half-hearted ta-da. The goat bleated its approval. Okay, so Derm's spell, from the fact that he says a half-hearted ta-da, has clearly worked. Okay, so he's sawed it in half. The goat's approved of his work, which again is quite strange. And he's done sort of a ta-da, but it's half-hearted because he's not actually in a show, so he doesn't need to have his full sort of showmanship. Derm waved his wand and the goat joined back together. Not wanting to stick around for anything further, it bolted into the field next door. Okay, so he's cut it in half, he's put it back together with his magic, and the goat's run off because it thinks, well, I'm not going to be involved in another trick, so I'm going to escape into the field. Listen, Derm said as he sat down next to his friend. We're not supposed to do this, but... Sproggit looked down at his friend's wand. Oh, okay. So, we're not supposed to do this, but... We've got an ellipsis there, so Derm clearly pauses in what he is saying and has an idea of how he is going to help Sproggit. And then we've got Sproggit look down at his friend's wand. So you get the idea that Derm's idea is he's going to let Sproggit use his wand, okay, which you're not supposed to do. That clearly breaks the rules of magicians because he says we're not supposed to do it, but he's going to lend his friend his wand and see if that helps. Derm gave it a conspiratorial wiggle. Now, conspiratorial is quite a difficult word. but if you look at the root of it, you get sort of conspiracy or conspire. Okay, now to conspire with someone is to sort of plan something that is wrong or that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, and a conspiracy is something that is wrong or something you are trying to prove the truth about. So conspiratorial wiggle means that he's sort of wiggling it in a way that shows it's something that is wrong or something that they shouldn't be doing, but he's decided to do it anyway. I've almost got the image of him wiggling the wand at him and sort of smirking with that sort of sly smile that people give you when they know what they're about to do is wrong, but they think it's quite a good idea. Go on, Derm instructed him. Try my wand, see if it makes a difference. Blood drained from Sproggett's face. Could he really do it? Was it just a case of using a proper wand? His had been a plastic prop from a joke shop, after all. Okay, so Sproggett's clearly quite nervous about this plan. The fact that his blood drained from his face means that he's gone really pale and sort of white, and people do that when they panic. Okay, and he's got sort of rhetorical questions going around in his head. Could he do it? Was it the fact that he's not using a proper wand, he's just using one from a joke shop? Is that the reason his magic isn't working? I mean, probably, because if you bought a plastic prop from a joke shop, it's unlikely to do magic. But you know, who am I to know the rules of magicians? Derm had told him that his had been made from the tooth of a dragon bathed in the tears of a mermaid. Okay, so you've got a very significant difference between what Sproggett is practicing with and what Derm is practicing with. So Sproggett has got a plastic prop from a joke shop that anyone could buy, whereas Derm has told Sproggett that his wand was made from the tooth of a dragon bathed in the tears of a mermaid. So both magical creatures which have been linked to the magic within Derm's wand. Derm said a lot of stuff like that, though. Sproggett took most of it with a pinch of salt. Okay, so you get the idea that the fact that he says Derm told him, even instead of saying the wand was made of, means that Sproggett doesn't quite believe everything that Derm says. So Derm seems to make a little bit of stuff up quite a lot. So he takes it with a pinch of salt is a saying that means sort of you take it, but you're always a bit sort of suspicious about whether it's true or not. So you listen and you agree and you sort of take what they say, but in the back of your head you're always thinking, yeah, but it might not be true. I don't fully believe you on everything he says. So Sproggett doesn't completely believe that the wand is made of that, but he goes along with it. Tentatively, he reached out and grasped the wand. Now, tentatively is a lovely word. It means nervously or sort of warily. So he's clearly quite nervous about what he's about to do. He's probably worried that it's going to go wrong. He's worried he's going to get in trouble. He knows he's not supposed to be doing it. He might be worried about the fact that it won't work, or he might be worried about the fact it will work. But he's quite nervous, but he's going to go along with it anyway because he's clearly reached out for the wand. For a moment, he thought a halo of light had fallen upon him until he realised it was just the sun coming out from behind the cloud. Okay, so as he reached for the wand, he thought for a moment that sort of a magical light had encompassed him. So he sort of had that magical moment of, oh, I feel this magic. But then he realised it was the sun. Well, what shall I do with it? He stammered. Okay, so again, we've got proof that he's nervous. So he's stammering. He's sort of stuttering over his words, which shows how nervous he is about what he's going to do. If he was going to perform real magic, he wanted it to be impressive. Derm reached down and picked up a seed from a crack in the patio. He placed it on the lawn and stepped back. Point the wand at the seed and say Magnus Maximus. Sproggett gulped, pointed the wand at the seed, and muttered the words. Okay, so Derm has given him a spell that he needs to perform. It's on a seed on the lawn, and it says Magnus Maximus. Okay, now the fact it says Maximus makes me think of large, so sort of maximum, largeness. I'm not quite sure what Magnus means, but I'm assuming it's to do with the seed. So my guess would be that the spell is supposed to make the seed grow. That would be my guess from what I know from what I'm reading. But I'm not certain, and we're not told exactly what the spell is supposed to do. So Sprocket gulped, pointed the wand at the seed, and muttered the words. And that is where it ends. Okay, so we are left on a cliffhanger as to what has happened. So he's tried this spell, he's got the magic wand. Do you think it works, or do you think it goes completely wrong? Okay, so you've now got some tasks that I want you to complete. So task 1, predict what you think happened next, okay, and use evidence from the text to support your answer. So we are left on a complete cliffhanger. You need to decide from what you have previously read whether you think the spell works and Sprocket actually manages to become a magician because he's got the wand, or does it go completely wrong and something bad happens? You are going to make that decision based on the evidence within the text. Okay, then you've got task 2, some vocabulary questions, task 3, some fact retrieval, and task 4, some inference questions for you to be getting on with as well. Okay, as always, feel free to share your work with your Year 6 teachers. We want to see what you are getting up with, and until next time, see you later.